Since I'm going out with her, it's time for us to get divorced. Take your daughter and get out of here. That's how it is. Sorry. Mrs. OK, with expressions and tones that seemed utterly devoid of remorse, my husband and his mistress, standing beside him, said so right in front of me and my daughter, a middle school student. They brazenly put their arms around each other as if to show off. Lately, I somehow started to suspect my husband might be cheating as his time of returning home became increasingly late. Hey, why have you been coming home so late recently? Don't nag. I'm working overtime. Don't bother me when I'm this tired. Despite his answer, I couldn't believe he was really working overtime, especially as I could smell women's perfume on him. However, without conclusive evidence, I couldn't confront him. But then one day, he brought his mistress home and told us to leave. From now on, it's just the two of us living in this house. That's right, this house and all its assets will be mine. My daughter and I packed our things and left the house, understanding that arguing was futile. I worried that showing my daughter her father's infidelity might have hurt her, especially during her adolescence. I apologized to her, but oddly she smiled happily. We did it, Mom, because those two are. My name is Rebecca Hansen. I am a working mother, working from home and living with my older husband, Andrew, and our middle school second daughter, Lucy. Lucy is right in the middle of her adolescence, and while she could be entering a rebellious phase, she hasn't shown any signs of it yet. She is always calm and cheerful, and being around her is soothing. On days without club activities, Lucy helps with shopping and dinner, grown up to be a kind child. She has even started to cook meals like pasta and stew on her own, especially when I'm too busy with work to prepare food. Lucy loves to talk, and during dinner, she shares various events of her day with me, such as club activities, plans with friends, and her growing interest in mathematics. Hearing this, I'm glad to imagine her enjoying her school life. However, she talks freely only with me. In front of Andrew, she hardly speaks. Her expression stiffens and her smile fades. She speaks only the minimum necessary. It's said that girls can become cold toward their fathers during adolescence, but I felt there was more to it than just a phase. Andrew hasn't been really involved in housework or parenting. Even when Lucy was younger and needed more care, Andrew would return from work and immediately seclude himself in his room, making no effort to interact with his daughter. I wish you would do a bit more around the house or spend some time with Lucy. I might be home, but I have work that I can't always put aside, you know. My appeals were met only with sighs, leading me to give up on asking for his help with household chores and parenting. Though Lucy's help has somewhat reduced the burden, my frustration with Andrew's continued indifference remains. Why doesn't Dad do any housework at all? He won't even wash his own dishes or tidy up the documents he spreads out in the living room, yet he tells me to make sure I clean up. Lucy expressed her frustration to me when we were alone. It was understandable that she felt irritated. Pondering what to do, I find myself sighing deeply when I'm alone. Andrew started to yell at Lucy and me about 2 years ago. Before, he would either ignore us or just sigh in response to anything we said, but recently he has begun responding with shouts of anger. I find myself missing the times when he would just ignore us. Please, I need you to help out with the housework. You know I'm getting very busy at work lately, too. To this, he would retort, What? I'm out working from morning till night, exhausted. You're always at home, so you should be able to handle it. He would yell with an intensity that brooked no argument, his eyes full of anger and his foot tapping with irritation, a menacing presence that leaves me speechless. Why has he become like this? He wasn't like this when we met. If he were, I would have never married him. We had something in common when we met. Both of us had lost parents. My parents died in an accident just as I was starting my career. Andrew's parents died of an illness, though he never specified which. His proposal was, since both of us know the pain of losing loved ones all too well, I think we can build a warm family together. I will never make you feel sad, so please marry me. During our dating period, he was very kind, and I thought I would be happy with him. That's why I accepted his proposal. But now, instead of sadness, anger accumulates day by day. When it's just Lucy and me, the house is warm. But as soon as Andrew comes home and starts shouting, the atmosphere becomes tense and prickly. Of course, the thought of divorce has crossed my mind, but when I think of Lucy, I can't help feeling it's better for her to have a father, even someone like him. I have no parents or relatives to turn to for advice. Having lost my parents, I've become sensitive to the loss of family, feeling a deep fear of it. So even when the thought of divorce comes to mind, I immediately shake it off. Thanks to Lucy, I've been able to endure, but she will soon be a high school student. To save up for her examination fees and high school entrance costs, I've been putting money into a separate account for her education for many years. It should have accumulated to a considerable amount. However, one day, I found the account balance was zero, the shocking number displayed on the ATM screen. I was bewildered, searching for a reason, but could only think that Andrew had something to do with it. I had never touched this money, using the cash card only to deposit money. Hey, did you withdraw money from Lucy's education account? Since I hadn't given Lucy the cash card or passbook, only Andrew could have withdrawn it. When he came home, I confronted him, but he refused to answer. Instead, he said, "Why does it matter if a woman doesn't go to school? Even if she takes exams, it's pointless, so it doesn't matter if the tuition money is gone." What? What are you talking about? Anger made my voice come out lower than it ever had. Lucy wants to go to high school, and isn't it a parent's duty to support her? And yet to say that education is unnecessary because she's a woman. I wish you would stop belittling people. This response almost confirmed to me that he was the one who withdrew the tuition. If he had nothing to do with it, he would at least show some surprise at the money being gone. However, he casually made his previous statement. I unleashed my anger on him. Although I had always shrunk back in fear of being yelled at whenever I showed even the slightest defiance, this time I did not back down and kept arguing with him. Andrew's attitude remained consistent, never wavering from his biased view that women don't need education. Can you really call that a true family? When I confided in a close friend about Andrew, she responded with these words, "Can you really call someone a father if he squanders money behind your back and then insults Lucy like that?" I nodded so much in agreement with her words that I thought my head might fall off. If you care about Lucy, cutting off such a father might actually be kinder to her. That's right. I had avoided choosing divorce, thinking it was for Lucy's sake, but I was wrong. I began to consider that divorcing might be better for both her and myself. A week has passed since then. "Dad is really the worst," her cold voice echoed in the living room, slightly trembling as if trying to contain her anger. Her fists clenched so tightly it looked like her nails might dig into her skin. She found out that Andrew had withdrawn money from the account meant for her school fees. I had told her about the existence of that account. "Thanks, oh Mom, I'll work hard to pass the exams for my preferred school." She had expressed her gratitude with a sparkling smile, but now her expression was dark with despair. With a cold look filled with hatred, she glared sharply at Andrew. After muttering, "The worst," again, she slammed the door and locked herself in her room. Perhaps being reprimanded by her daughter might have a greater effect on Andrew than anything I could say. However, when I looked at him, he seemed bewildered as if he had no idea what had happened. What's with her? Such a cheeky attitude towards her father. It must be because of your poor upbringing, right? Despite it being his own fault, he directed his anger at me. It's astounding that he would use such words here. It's only natural for Lucy to be angry. Andrew had no right to be outraged. He refused to acknowledge his fault. Then his returns home began to get even later. Although he used to come home by 8:00 p.m. even on days with overtime, it gradually shifted to 9:00 p.m., 10:00 p.m., and then there were days he wouldn't return even after 11:00 p.m. Hey, why have you been coming home so late recently? Stop nagging. I'm working overtime. Don't bother me when I'm this tired. I wondered if it was really overtime. My distrust in him grew, not just because of his late returns, but also because I could smell a floral perfume on him. At first, it was a faint scent, but over time the fragrance became stronger. It might be the scent from someone at work, but it was too strong to be just that. However, without proof, I couldn't confront him. Days went by without Andrew and Lucy speaking a word to each other. The gap between them caused by the school fees issue grew deeper. Then one day, after a long while, around 7:00 p.m., I heard the front door open. Andrew had returned. Until then, talking cheerfully, Lucy's expression vanished the moment he did. I felt something was off when I heard his footsteps approaching the living room, accompanied by a woman's laughter. His voice responded to her giggles as he appeared in the living room. Both Lucy and I were speechless at the sight of Andrew. We hadn't seen him smiling like this for a long time, and an obviously much younger woman was standing behind him. The strong perfume that wafted around her overpowered the scent of the dinner I was preparing. It was the same scent I had started to notice a while ago. Stunned, we looked at Andrew and the woman while they were wearing a relaxed smile. "Excuse me, but who is this?" I asked tentatively. They turned towards each other smugly, putting their arms around one another as if to flaunt their relationship. "This is Stacy Hill. We're dating." "That's how it is. Sorry, Mrs." With a drawn-out voice, Stacy made an irritating remark. Her expression and tone suggested she didn't think she was doing anything wrong. My suspicion that Andrew might be cheating was unfortunately confirmed. "So we're getting divorced. Take Lucy and get out." "Don't be silly." Did he bring Stacy back just to have this conversation? Lucy glared at Andrew and Stacy in turn with eyes full of intense anger. "You can't just suddenly say something like that." Andrew doesn't have feelings for you anymore, and Mom, her way of calling me was a real shock to me. Indeed, I'm in my early 40s, perhaps to someone in their 20s like Stacy. I might appear that way. But I felt anger at being looked down upon by someone engaging in an affair. "Just so you know, I'll be demanding compensation from you." "Why would you demand it from me?" "It's absurd for me to pay when they are the ones who cheated." "Why?" "Because you and your daughter neglected me. It's compensation for hurting my feelings." Andrew spoke brazenly and frivolously, presumably referring to our complaints about him misusing the education funds. But that was entirely his fault. "So hurry up and leave. Stacy and I are going to live here from now on." "That's right. This house and its assets will be mine." Lucy and I quickly packed our belongings and left the house. A friend agreed to let us stay with them. "I'm sorry, Lucy. It's my fault for clinging to someone like him for so long, causing you distress. I might have left a scar on her by exposing her father's infidelity." However, Lucy seemed oddly happy. "We did it, Mom." Confused by her words, I looked at her closely. Then she whispered something to me. Later, we found ourselves facing Andrew and Stacy again, accompanied by a lawyer. We were there for the divorce mediation. Stacy was smirking, her arm intertwined with Andrew's. I was almost impressed they could display such shamelessness in front of a third party. "We demand compensation for the affair, as well as repayment for the misused education funds." When I stated this matter-of-factly, they didn't seem surprised, smiling foolishly as they responded. "What nonsense are you talking about? Do you have any proof that I used the savings?" "Yes, I have one right here." Andrew, not expecting evidence, stared at the proof I presented. This evidence wasn't collected by me, but by Lucy. In fact, she had realized Andrew was cheating and had also caught wind that he was squandering her education fund on his mistress. "Wait, this is different from what we discussed. I can't defend you like this," the lawyer frowned and whispered to Andrew. Though they thought they were being quiet, their voices carried clearly to me. They must have planned to blame me for the divorce with false accusations. However, the divorce was finalized with Andrew being at fault, and we were able to obtain a lump sum payment for the compensation and the misused savings. Andrew acted nonchalantly, saying, "Well, it's not a significant amount, despite being deserted by his lawyer and having to pay a substantial sum, including Stacy's compensation." One might wonder why he remained smug, but I knew the reason. Looking down so they couldn't see my face, I secretly lifted the corners of my mouth into a smile. Half a year later, I received a call. The caller ID showed my now ex-husband Andrew. I picked up the vibrating phone without hesitation, having anticipated he might contact me eventually. "Hello, how are you doing?" "How am I doing?" "Thanks to you, I'm in a mess." It was certainly not my fault. He was merely facing the consequences of his own actions. "So, what's the trouble?" "Don't play dumb. Why did you tell my parents about the divorce and everything?" He raised his voice in anger. Since it was a phone call, I couldn't see his face, and he couldn't lash out at me physically. I responded without fear. "Well, if we're getting divorced, it's only right to inform the parents, isn't it?" "But why?" He mumbled something in return, probably wondering how I knew his parents were alive. Actually, Andrew's parents weren't dead, so why had he lied all along? It was to monopolize their inheritance. His parents were quite wealthy, meaning their inheritance would be substantial. Being an only child, Andrew thought he could secure a large sum of money for himself if he kept his parents' existence a secret from me. He also hadn't told his parents about his marriage. During her investigation into Andrew's affair, Lucy discovered and informed me that his parents were actually alive. Lucy had been sneakily checking the phone book and making notes of her grandparents' contact information, seizing the moment whenever Andrew was in the bath. Dad had them saved under Dad and I and Mom, so it was easy to find. Lucy was smiling proudly. Then I secretly called his parents to explain everything. Of course, they didn't believe me right away. "What? Andrew was married?" He never showed any signs of that to us. However, with persistent explanation, I managed to convince them. "Rebecca, if there's anything we can do, please tell us." I leaned on his parents, prepared to ask for their help if Andrew made a fuss during the divorce mediation. But unexpectedly, he complied with our demands for compensation without issue. He planned to ask his parents for money. The funds Andrew used during the mediation weren't from his savings but borrowed money. His money had nearly all gone to Stacy, his much younger mistress, whom he couldn't resist spoiling. Whatever Stacy wanted, whether it was jewelry, clothes, or dining at fancy restaurants, Andrew was willing to provide. Marrying Andrew seemed like it would lead to such a happy life. While Stacy was pleased, Andrew was far from calm internally, knowing her demands would continue yet he had no money left. Then he remembered his parents, thinking they could bail him out if necessary. However, life is not that easy. Once they learned everything, his parents disowned him. "Not a single penny of the inheritance will go to you. It will go to Lucy." After the divorce was finalized, Andrew showed up at his parents' home, only to be met with this declaration by his father. He had lost everything. After the divorce, He was fired from his job after debt collectors harassed him. Stacy also disappeared after quitting her job, likely due to Andrew's debt. With his parents cutting ties, Andrew had no one left to turn to. That's when I had a bad feeling. Just when I thought it was merely a call filled with complaints, I found myself bracing for the possibility that he might actually propose remarriage. "Please, will you marry me again? Then I wouldn't have to pay you compensation for the affair, right?" As expected, I rubbed my forehead in frustration and deliberately let out a loud sigh, audible enough for him to hear over the phone. He probably thought that by remarrying me, he could avoid compensation payments and possibly reverse his disinheritance. But there was no advantage for me in this. After all he and Stacy Hill had put me and Lucy through, the nerve of such a proposition was astounding. "Where are you now? I'll come over so we can talk." "Don't come. Besides, we've moved." I cut him off sharply, and for a moment, Andrew was at a loss for words. "If you try to find out our address and show up, I will call the police. I will never remarry you. You've made your bed, now lie in it." With that, I hung up without waiting for a reply. Later, he appeared at our place once, seemingly underestimating my resolve to actually call the police. However, my threat was not idle. The realization that I was serious must have hit him when I called the police, as he never showed up again. Having overcome the significant ordeal of her father's infidelity, Lucy successfully passed her entrance exams. Invited by my in-laws for a celebration, we enjoyed a feast together. "Congratulations on your acceptance, Lucy." "You've done well," they praised her warmly, making us feel incredibly welcome. Despite initially being nervous, Lucy soon began to engage in conversation, smiling. "Rebecca, this is just a suggestion, and you can refuse if you don't like it. But with this preface, my in-laws proposed the idea of adoption. For me, who had lost parents, it was an incredibly attractive offer. Lucy had also grown fond of them. Believing we could find happiness living together, I accepted their proposal. Now, Lucy and I are spending our days peacefully with our new family."